All right, well, we might get started. It's going to be a little bit informal. We've got hybrid tonight as well. So we've obviously got people here on Zoom, as well as awesome to see some real faces in the lab on site. It feels awesome to start to welcome back some students, some learners to come in. You know, we're all about community and conversation. So having people on site, having that in-person connection, there's nothing like it. So we're glad we can get back to it. So tonight is obviously the Human Potential for the Digital Economy information session. So we are talking about one of the postgraduate programs available at Tech Futures Lab. Obviously this space here is both the Mind Lab and Tech Futures Lab, so you may have heard of kind of one or the other. But we are going to be covering off some real, good information about the program, and our best way to do that, as you can see, there's some empty seats up here, but they're soon going to be filled with some great minds and some people that have also done the program themselves or have actually just had their first and last in-person session today. Of course, a lot of their program has been through online learning. So we are just going to start off this session tonight with a karakia. If you don't know, all of the programs at the Mind Lab and Tech Futures Lab are grounded in kaupapa Māori. So it's very important for us, we're an Aotearoa education provider. It's hugely important for us that we are honouring, respecting Te Tiriti, making sure that everything that we do is grounded in those values. And this is a really fantastic way for us to take a breath. We've all got very busy lives, no doubt, traffic getting here and weather, and it's getting colder and darker and all that, and even online, surely making food and putting kids to bed and all those things that you need to do before you can settle down. So thank you for being here. Thank you for taking the time out of your evening to join us here tonight for this kōrero. So we're just going to start off with this karakia, just as a way to kind of let go the day that's been, take that breath together and move forward into the session. So just join me with the karakia whakataki. Ko te kawa o runga, ko te kawa o raro, ko te kawa ora, ko te kawa ora. E rongo e whakeirihia ki runga, turuturi o whiti whakamaua ki a tina. Hui e whakakie. So, my name's Bex Taylor. I work in the marketing team at the Mind Lab and Tech Futures Lab, and it's a pleasure to kind of mini facilitate this the session that we've got tonight. But really what I kind of mentioned before and what we're really keen to do is to share with you the stories of people that have done the program. And funny story, one of the people that have done the program, she's wearing two hats tonight. So Fiona Pond is the program lead now for Tech Futures Lab. So she is kind of the face of and mind behind all of the incredible postgraduate programs at Tech Futures Lab, which we have quite a range of. But she actually made her way to this organisation by doing this very program. So she studied the human potential of digital economy. She's not graduated just yet, but in September she will be. You'll probably have to both hand out the certificates to some, and then how are you going to do that? Hand it to yourself as well somehow?
Give it a go.
Yeah. So obviously brings a really, really unique insight, rather than just coming into this and saying, here's what we should do. It's, this is what I learned. This is what we all learn together. How can we make these programs bigger and better for the people of Aotearoa? So we will, I will actually, I think probably best for Fiona to come up and join me now. Fiona's going to talk about Tech Futures Lab, who they are. We're going to give you a little bit of information about the program itself, so the actual program, the structure, and then we're going to invite up two of our current / almost soon to be finished students and Fiona as well. And we're just going to have a bit of a Q&A. If you are joining us online, feel free to pop in the chat if you ever struggle to hear us or anything like that. We can move the video camera around and obviously speak up just to make sure you're getting a really good experience. And also, if you've got any questions, pop them in the chat. We might not get to them until the end of the panelist discussion, but we definitely want to make sure that we've got time for your questions, and then there'll be a few slides on next steps too. So we are just going to watch a video first, which just gives a little bit about who is Tech Futures Lab. And let's all just hope that the technology prevails.
We are the Mind Lab and Tech Futures Lab. Together, our purpose is to create impactful futures. We do this by providing innovative education to empower all people of Aotearoa, New Zealand and beyond to stay ahead of a constantly changing world. We create communities where we can inspire each other, collaborate, transform, and explore the future together. From rapid upskilling to substantial learning experiences focus on big change. Primarily delivered online, our programs are designed with the real world front of mind. Together we teach context, not content, so everything you learn is able to be used straight away in your workplace, your community, your industry, your business, or even your side hustle. Come and see what the future is all about. Get excited and arm yourself with the skills, the confidence and ability to make real change. Come and learn with us. We are the Mind Lab and Tech Future.
Okay, so I'm going to invite the lovely Fiona up, who's going to talk a little bit about the program and program structure. Thank you, Fiona.
Well, thank you, Bex. Kia ora tātou. Welcome to everyone in the room. No more haere mai. It's lovely to have you here. As I said to a few of you earlier, on-site students is a wonderful thing. I only started at the organisation in January, so I haven't seen any students at all really on site until today. So it's been exciting to meet them live in the flesh. And yeah, of course, kia ora and welcome to those of you online. It's wonderful to have you here with us this evening. And while we can't offer you a refreshing beverage or a canapé, I hope you can find something just suitable in your own cupboards and enjoy that with us as we take you through the evening. So as Bex said, I am the programs lead for Tech Futures Lab. That means I have the pleasure of overseeing our postgraduate programs, which include, of course, the postgraduate human potential for the digital economy, this one, but also the other postgraduate we have, which is connected environments, and of course our Masters of Technological Futures and various micro-credentials also. But tonight the focus is going to be firmly on our postgraduate certificate for human potential for the digital economy. It is a bit of a mouthful. There's a lot packed into that little title, and so what we're going to do over the next hour or so is just unpack what sits behind that title, because it carries a big weight, that title, and it's interesting to see. So look, how we learn and how the program works, how it can work for you. I'll talk you through the program structure there. So the program is 32 weeks long, and it is constructed mostly of weekly 2-hour live online sessions. Now these sessions are for the most part facilitated by industry experts. So it's not necessarily people on the team, but we like to bring, I guess, a rotating cast of industry experts who are current in their space, know their content really, really well, can bring real life case studies and applications to it. So those sessions that will happen mostly on Tuesday, it will be Tuesdays for our upcoming cohort, but we'll get into that detail later. They're not your traditional lecture, they're much more an engaging, kind of interactive, facilitated discussion, built around case studies, etc., where your experience is very much part of the conversation too. So those are the 2-hour live weekly sessions. We also have, throughout that 32 weeks, 4 full-day face-to-face workshops spaced throughout the program. Unfortunately, the past 2 cohorts haven't been able to have that face-to-face experience because of this little global pandemic we've been experiencing. We're hopeful that our next future intakes will be able to have that face-to-face on-site experience. So those are a great opportunity. There's one that kicks off the program for the upcoming cohort in July. The first day, it's a wonderful opportunity for students to get to know us, for students to get to know each other. What we've found and the feedback we've gotten from past cohorts in this program and others is that cohort experience is really, really valuable. So the people that are travelling through the study with you at the same time become a great source of support because they're also on the same learning journey, but also bring with them some unique perspectives and experiences that they can share and you can tap into, just as you bring as well. So there's always lots of good conversations amongst the cohort. There is, of course, a bit of self-directed learning per week. We do say 8 to 16 hours there. That will vary weekly and depending on your study style too, I guess. But there'll be some weeks when the topic just attracts you so much. It really captures you, I guess, and you will find yourself falling down a rabbit hole of research and exploring because you're just so interested in this particular topic. There'll be other weeks where the Tuesday session, the live online session, yep, you'll come across it. You think that's interesting, but not super applicable to my area of practice or what I'm trying to achieve at the moment, but good to know. So some weeks you'll end up with 60, 50 40, however many internet tabs open on your computer because you'll be that interested in what's going on. Others you'll just think, yeah, good to know, I know enough, I'm happy to move on from that. And then of course come assessment time, because we do assessments, you might find that you're doing a few more hours too, just again, depends on your time management style there. And the other piece that we have is our weekly hui. So this is an informal and optional part of the program, but it's a half hour before the online sessions, which is just a really great way to catch up with your cohort, the program team, I'm usually there for those, and just have some conversation, any questions you might have around assessment, around content, or just current events, really. It can be a lot of fun, those Q&As, and you don't quite know where they're going to go, but it's always a good time. So look, that's the kind of how we learn across those different formats. I can pick up some questions at the end if there's any specifics, but for now. And then of course we have our course topic. So if that was how we learn, this is looking a bit more at what we learn. Now the way the course is organised, and because technology and the way the future of work is changing so rapidly, the content tends to move and update quite quickly too. So while there's some examples of content there, it's really those 4 overarching themes that run throughout the program that are of interest. So if we're talking about digitalisation and adaptation, it's asking that question of how has digitalisation impacted on traditional business models? So what are some of the new ways that we're working, learning and playing, doing things that we possibly weren't 5, 10 years ago? Future Insight then builds on this. So what then are the emerging disruptive technologies, the different ways, the new frameworks that are emerging around leadership and working that are likely to have significant impact in the future? Contemporary organisational ecosystems. So are the systems that have got us to where we are today the systems that we're going to need to move us forward into the next way of doing business in organisations? And this is things we're talking about, like introducing kaupapa Māori more into how we do business, increasing diversity in culture, systems thinking, data-informed decision-making, all new ways that we need to be thinking about how our organisational ecosystems are operating. And then, of course, it's in the title, human potential. So given all of the above, what do we as individuals and collectively need to know and do differently? So what are the skills and capabilities that we need to develop and grow so that we can be part of this conversation, part of this change that's occurring to lead into this space? So yeah, some big topics covered in the course of this program. Won't go into too much detail here, but how your learning is assessed. I think what is interesting in this part is that the course is divided into 2 phases. So the first phase is around evaluating, reflecting on the impacts of digitalisation, the future insights, how they're impacting your area of practice. That's phase 1. There's some assessments around that. Once you've got that kind of understanding of what's happening in your space with these emerging disruptive technologies, new ways of doing things, it then becomes about, so what? So what is it that you can do? What strategy or strategies can you implement into your area of practice that can help move that forward? And I think one of the neat things about this program, and we saw it in full flight today, is this idea of developing a theoretical but actionable plan. So by the time you finish the program, you've come out with a plan that you're ready to implement into the real world. So even though you might not have implemented it throughout the course of the program, as you finish the program, you have this plan you can take forward and make a reality. And I say I mentioned today because just today we've had, I think as Bex mentioned earlier, about 20 of our recent human potential students delivering their final presentations today. And that was essentially summarising their theoretical but actionable plans. And the range of these was extraordinary. It was a really interesting conversation. We might dig a little bit into that, once we get into the panel. But you're coming out with a real world application. I guess that's what I'm trying to say is really important. It's not just a theoretical assessment, it's something you can take forward into your workplace, into your area of interest and implement. So as I said earlier, we do have an upcoming cohort intake in July. That is that blended delivery, just as I've described. 4 days on site, the rest is online, and just be assured that if for any reason we do need to pivot to online for full day workshops, we can do that, touch wood. We have got very good at that, so don't let that dissuade you. All further details in the program book, happy to talk through any extra details there as well. And also worth mentioning that coming in to do the postgraduate certificate for human potential can lead, if you want to, a pathway to masters. So you can cross-credit some of your credits from the postgrad certificate towards a Master of Technological Future. So a really useful thing to know. Some people find that the thought of doing a master's is a bit overwhelming, and actually to do the postgrad cert is a really nice way to get back into postgraduate learning, build that kind of confidence in that space, and then before you know it, you might just think that actionable, theoretical but actionable plan might need a little bit more actioning, and you might move it into a master's. We've had some students do that. If you're interested in that, we can talk about that later, but in the interest of time, the fabulous Tech Futures Lab team. So look, I've introduced myself. The other two people that you will find super useful and on your journey in this program, or if you have any further queries, Yuka Gray, our program manager, and Sarah Mushrama, our program coordinator. Because as I mentioned earlier, while we have a bit of a rotating cast of industry experts running those online sessions, it's always good to have a familiar face, and these are your familiar faces. So both Yuka and Sarah are often online for those sessions and always available to support you and help you. Which then brings me to our incredible panelists. Here we go. So Ian Scott from Randstad and Tanya Rowland, two of our new, I'm going to say human potential digital economy graduates. So they have completed their program, but are yet to graduate. So when I say new, I'm talking about possibly about 2 hours ago.
Assuming we've passed.
Assuming we've passed, yeah, well, yeah. Well, that'll be a bit awkward, but we can have the conversation later. But for now, sure. Yeah, look, so as I said, we had the cohort on site today, and it was wonderful to see them here. And we're delighted to have Tanya and Ian stay on and share their evening with us and share their experiences with us. So perhaps if I could ask you to come up here, join us here, and maybe
ask some questions.
Bex is going to do some questions.
Yeah, so I think we might need to, once we get seated, we might need to rejig the camera just to make sure all of these online can see. Tanya's recently had a bit of knee issues, so she's going to sit in a very comfy chair, and we're going to kind of kick it at the stool.
We're up there.
Yeah, they're quite high actually. But don't worry, it's not the red chair that tips over if you say something.
And I'm here with my two hats on, I think, but
yes.
As Bex said, I was a student on this program last year as well. So I completed in December, and I started here in January. So I've got a recent student memory as well as a program know-how,
which is awesome. So just before we do kick off into the panel session, were there any questions via the chat on program structure at all? No? Okay, cool. We can absolutely pick up any of those questions afterwards. So if they're burning, just write them down and we can come back to them. In the efforts of trying to be paper free, I'm sitting here with my laptop with the questions. I was supposed to pop home and get my iPad, but I just and I live just across the road, so that's just real laziness from going out in the rain.
It is raining.
Yeah, it is. And you're all here, so well done you. Cool. This is just going to be a bit of a corridor, just a Q&A. We've got some questions that we've popped down, but if it takes you down a squiggly line, that's totally fine too. We love that. We love the squiggly lines. And in saying that as well, I'm quite happy if someone wants to kind of pop their hand up as well and jump in a question too at the same time. That's no worries at all. But I think, as always, it's nice to just have a bit of an introduction from the both of you. So I would ask you to introduce yourself, Tanya, first, a little bit about who you are, and then what led you to the Human Potential Program.
Such a long time ago.
I know.
2 years ago before. So hello everyone. I run my own business, so I'm the founder, and I call myself the Chief Reinvention Officer. I know, it's cool that. So my background before working for myself was in corporate. I worked for the last previous 10 years in pharmaceutical companies, very much in digital transformation. So I was multi-channel lead and playing in that space. So I definitely had some digital understanding because I was supporting the team to adopt digital ways of working. Since 2016, I've worked for myself, and I've worked with clients in Australia and New Zealand as we've seen, because of this course, we're all reinventing all the time. So I still support digital transformation, but around where we would see now as customer experience and what we call employee experience. I build capability programs to help teams work differently in the way they come up with decisions about what they're going to do and how they execute. So very much in the people and capability space. So that's what I do. So for me, when I was looking at this paper, I suppose even though I had knowledge of technology, you don't know what you don't know, and it keeps changing. And so for me, it was probably a little bit of feeling like I wanted something that had a bit more grunt behind it. So the postgraduate, that process appealed to me. In the last few years, I've retrained in design thinking, design sprints, team coaching, a lot of things. But even in saying that, this being the postgraduate, and knowing what the work that Francis has done, I was very attracted to how Tech Futures delivers what they do. And I was probably also very interested to get around other people that potentially think like me and are on a learning journey. That for me very much was about who was I going to meet and how could I bounce off them. So that's sort of, does that answer the question?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's, that's on the door when you walk in. It's welcome to our community of lifelong learners. And that's really what it's all about, right? It's, you don't know what you don't know. And that's, I think, what I love about what Fiona was talking about as well earlier, that the content is always updating. Because if we just created a program and then 10 years later, of course, that program's completely out of date. 1 year later, it's completely out of date, One cohort after the next, constantly learning and adapting as well. So that's great that obviously aligns a lot with your stuff, Tony. Yes, awesome. Ian, would you like to have a little intro to yourself?
Sure. Kia ora tātou. I'm Ian Scott, work for a company called Randstad. If you haven't come across Randstad, it's a recruitment HR services company. It's a global company, I'm not trying to show off by that, but more to say that it kind of provided a lot of the backdrop and kind of the reasons why this was interesting. So we build a lot of tech, we buy tech, but I wanted to kind of localise it, make it sort of relevant to Aotearoa, to New Zealand, to the people in our business directly that we interact with. So we sort of covered some courses internally around leading transformation, but I felt that sort of didn't shift into that next phase, which was actually making it kind of actionable, which is the kind of outcome of this. So for me, it was around finding something that actually I could relate directly back to my workplace. So kind of cool thing is in today, not graduating yet, apparently. I thought I graduated, but fine.
Completed.
Completed. Right, so, but it's nice to know I've got something I can take with me and then I can actually start tomorrow. In fact, I've already started. I think most of us have, because you kind of get passionate by it. You sort of go, yeah, it's something I can do. So yeah, that's why I ended up here.
That's awesome. Fiona, you've obviously introduced yourself, but do you want to share a little bit about what led you to human potential those many years ago?
It does feel like a long time ago. I think 6 months in COVID times, like 6 years in pre-COVID times. But yeah, look, I was working in learning and development in tertiary education. I've been interested in what Francis has been doing since the inception, I think, so probably 2013. I've been keeping a close eye. I probably was quite interested in the masters and have been kind of thinking, oh, it's not quite the right time. It's not quite time for me. So when the postgraduate HPDE popped up, perfect. So it just felt like a lower risk opportunity to give something a go. It was in pandemic. I do have 2 small kids. We did go into lockdown halfway through my cohort as well, but we managed through that. But yeah, I guess what my actual workplace driver was, I'd seen the impacts of COVID and how people had gone from doing what they thought was impossible to possible pretty much overnight. So we had higher education lecturers who just were not keen on engaging or moving into online spaces, suddenly because they had to do it. It turned a 5-year strategy into a 5-day, 5-week reality. And I wanted to keep moving with that, keep that momentum up. So if we can do it, what else can we do? And I guess that I felt, that I needed to come somewhere else, learn a bit more than I was learning perhaps in my job, and get exposed to some different ideas to really think about how we can push forward with that. So for me, it was about what can we do in organisational learning that we haven't been doing, that technology can help us get that scale, I guess.
And there's something about that acceleration too, because what I always think about, and the analogy that I kind of use when I'm talking about postgraduate programs is, anyone can sign up to the gym, right? So you can sign up for Jets and you pay, flat fee, it's cheap as chips, and you just have no motivation, you're not going to get buddies to go with, you arrive and you're like, what do I do? Whereas you can, pay for PT or like boot camps. That's what this place feels like to me. It's like all you have to do is just get through the door, and then once you're here, it's that curated journey. It's designed in a way that I love that the first stage is evaluate, and then it's like, right, we feel better, we know some stuff, we've challenged ourselves, we've come together on that journey. Okay, now what's next? Now, so what? So I think that's great that you were kind of in that place. You're like thinking, what do I do next? And then you're going to dive in. Very cool.
Can I just add to
Yes.
that, because I think it's easy for us to talk about it now because we're at the end of it. But when we started, if I reflect back on that, when we did our first formative paper, you have to reference things, you have to do some rigorous stuff, and even though I do a lot of writing, it was like, oh my gosh, I haven't written a proper paper for a long time. So I think the process does guide you with the first paper you're not going to get marked on. But so it's a great place to start, so you're not feeling the pressure, and you develop the muscle, which now we're sitting here, my submission was 60 papers long. I don't know how that happened, but I know I have a problem. Not everybody's is that long, but at the start, those disciplines, we have to warm back into it when we've been in the workplace. We've got to think differently with rigor and evidence. And this is good because you do get guided to get to that place eventually with those disciplines, because it is about not just having good ideas, but validating them. We need to do that. We need to be data-led, we need to be research-led. So even though it's very applicable, the postgraduate still has those disciplines, which I think is really important, which it should have, but in a context of working people.
How many pages?
Yeah, I know. There was the appendix and references, just saying, but
do you need to leave now?
I know. Submitted a few more pages.
I'm a bit concerned about the
yeah.
but the kind of nice thing was that even though mine was 60 pages, maybe 13, I think, but I wasn't brave enough to do this, but you can use other mediums. So if you want to do it by video or other means, you can, which I thought was a kind of nice touch and really different to what I've experienced in education before. So that's nice. I'm not brave enough to do it, but
maybe on your masters.
Maybe
on your masters.
Who knows?
That's really key as well. I actually, as well as working for the Mind Lab, I just recently completed one of the micro credentials, which is the short, kind of compact online courses. The one that I did was Leading Beyond Sustainability. And as you can tell, I'm a talker. So for me, and he's a very loud guy, I'm a talker. So for me, I wanted to be able to present. So I did that. I had a video, I had a slide deck, and I talked through my idea. And for me, knowing that I didn't have to write lots of pages and dive deep in that way and kind of talk things through instead was a huge benefit as well. So you never know. Yeah, I think we've even, there's performance-based submissions as well are open. Someone can, create a piece of art if that's how they're going to.
Yeah, because it all comes back to we want you to have a valuable real-world outcome for you. So there's no point writing a 30,000 word thesis if that's just going to sit in a drawer and nothing's going to happen with it. So if you want to write a business plan for a startup, if that's your output at the end of the program, because that's what you need, then we'll assess that. And so long as you're hitting those criteria, that's a valid submission.
I love that. Before I get into the next question, I just want to ask a bit of a tactical question, because it's come up a little bit and we're experiencing it right now with hybrid. What was your learning journey like? Obviously, so you both, just to clarify, you both have had entirely online experiences except for this today final one of 4 full-day sessions. Did you sign up for the program knowing that you would be fully online, or did you sign up?
It was going to be a hybrid.
It was going to be hybrid, yeah. And then obviously with all the lockdowns and things like that, transition to one. What was that experience for you? And highs and lows, of course, because it's always good to reflect.
Yep. So I do a lot of online facilitation myself, so I'm a really tough judge of people. Because you can't help when you're doing it yourself, you're looking at it. So I think it varies. It's great because every week there's a different person presenting the material. So I think that can be really good versus when you have a teacher that you just don't like their teaching style or whatever it is. But on the flip side, it's going to vary every week, and their way of teaching is going to vary because they're not teachers, they're experts in their space. So that's the positive and negative. But in saying that, you know, I think like anything, because they're using the tool well, we have breakout groups, even in a big cohort like we had, you get to know people. So I think like anything, the human connection is where you have conversations, and we definitely got time to do that. There is also, I didn't join it a lot, but there's what they call an OHU, which is our group, our micro group. We get put into a smaller group, and each week that group can come together with one of the team. And so there are many moments to still have interaction that doesn't feel like a passive learning experience. You are in the room with people. That's definitely what's happening, even if it's virtual. That's awesome. Yeah.
Do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I think the way that you, it's a pretty relaxed kind of vibe, can I say, right?
Yeah.
So you sort of get into it, and certainly I was a little bit nervous around how structured and how formal, certainly dressed like a waiter, but that it was going to be. But actually, it was. I remember the thing, the session that I most remember was when I was folding washing, and if my wife's watching, which I don't think she is, I have actually once folded the washing, and it was. But I remember it.
But you're going to claim that one time.
One time.
Forever.
One time, and so the point for me was I was able to stand up. There was no judgment around it. You could do what you wanted to do. If you got your camera off, that's kind of okay. It's quite nice to have your camera on so you can interact. But if you do, that's all right. We had people with one of our cohort had a child through this process. Was breastfeeding their child through this. Did an amazing presentation. Like it put a whole lot of heart and soul into it. Like amazing, just amazing. And that kind of drives you on to go, well, holy hell, she's managing 2 other children and a newborn, and I can't do it. No, come on, I've got to work hard, right? So that inspires you. That sort of that effort, that sort of gets you going. So I enjoyed that. I think cohort with their children in the park while they're online, and, facing a question from Francis on a call while watching my son play cricket was difficult.
You're like, pass? Someone else, please?
I look silly now, but no, so I think there's lots of different ways you can interact, and there's not, while we think of education sometimes being quite formal and intense, it's got those elements, but it also got some fun and some different ways to interact, so I like that.
That's awesome. I had full knee surgery in February, and I didn't miss a class. So I managed to time it well. That we had class on Monday, surgery on Tuesday, back on the Monday. But it's because being virtual was the benefit. I could still be sitting in my bed and nobody knows. So to that point, the flexibility, that's a big positive, I think, the fact that even though there's the full day, because we're juggling our job and stuff, so you can still make it work. So you wouldn't plan to be at cricket normally answering something, but you can make it work when you have to.
Needs must, right?
And the flexibility and that support is across all the that's really like embedded into the Minority Teachers Ed ethos, because it's programs designed for busy people like you.
Just keep turning up.
Yeah, exactly. And part-time in that way, that they're designed to be done alongside work or a passion project or a side hustle or something like that, because then you get that real theory, it's theory, but then it's, okay, how do I actually implement this? What's that practical way that I can take this and do something with it? Which is really cool.
I talked about 60 tabs open. I'm like, I remember that.
The rabbit hole.
Totally. And you start clicking on the stuff. Wow, where have we ended up? But that's kind of the fun. You actually, it doesn't become working. It becomes, a sort of interesting journey that you end up on, and then next thing it's 1 a.m. and you probably should
be folding washing.
Fold washing. It's nothing productive.
That's actually spurred another question. Sorry, Brad, I realise I'm not asking any of these questions, but this is just such an interesting conversation. And I think, Tanya, so you work on your own, you work for yourself. But Ian, from your perspective around your team, how did your team react to your learning, or did they benefit from it, do you think? What was that? Those 60 tabs was one of those tabs, oh my gosh, I have to share this with the team, and then they went on that rabbit journey together. Yeah,
absolutely. So the kind of outcome of my project, to summarise it, it's around democratising the learning, so that everybody gets on board and everybody can share in the digital journey, right? So you sort of feel like you're not doing it just for you, you're doing it for everyone. So when those articles or those papers or stuff that kind of became interesting, I thought others might benefit from it. I'd share it straight away. a little bit out of context sometimes. So people are thinking it's just this weird guy with this thing on VR and AR that sort of has no context and they can't really connect it. So you need to have conversations around it as well. They haven't been on that same journey. But I guess part of me was, hey, I think you'll find this interesting. But part of me is trying to raise the curiosity and kind of raise the interest. And go, oh, hang on a minute, I want to look at more. I want to delve into this myself. So yeah, I shared a lot, probably less than I should and more than they'd like.
Is there a question? How are we doing for time? 1:45. Okay. We're thinking probably a couple more questions, hey Brad, and then we'll open up. Awesome. I'll promise I'll ask one of these wonderful questions, but that was just a great one to go. Oh, I love this one. So I think this is a bit more in the less about the delivery methods and that kind of side, more about that purpose. So there's a lot of talk floating around about finding your why. So let's talk a little bit about finding your why. So obviously, there's amazing concepts like ikigai, things that you could dive into that I know a lot of this done on the program. So what does this mean for you? Do you think it's just a luxury for the privileged to worry about? That's a deep question, isn't it?
Yeah, thanks, Brad. Sorry.
Go on, Ed.
Do you want me to start?
I don't mind. I'm going to go ask water.
Go for it, Ian.
So I think the last part, could you repeat the very last part of that? Because I think it's an important part of the question.
Yeah, so a lot of talk floating around finding your why. What does this mean? Is this just a luxury for the privileged to worry about?
So when I read that, I was like, is it? So, but I don't think it is. Right? I think finding your why, especially if you think about I think, I'll get my stats wrong, but I think Jen said the most populous of our workforce at the moment nowadays, or just about.
Sounds right.
Yeah, we'll say that. Say that.
Brad can fact
We'll make
check
it up. No fact checking,
Maybe,
please,
right?
Brad. So, I think what we know about younger generations that are coming through, they are more purpose-led. That doesn't matter where their background's from. It doesn't matter that they're from, any parts of New Zealand or any parts around the world. What it means is that they're kind of sick of how people my age and older have treated the world, right? And they think, well, there's a better way of doing it. So they want to learn. So I don't think, I think that people, with respect our age who are sitting there doing it, I think we're going, I think there's a better way as well. So we're sort of, the cogs are turning and we're trying to figure out a different way to kind of think about businesses, the ecosystem, planet, all these things, right? It's all pretty big and kind of mind-blowing. And I'm not saying
also intertwined, yeah.
But yeah, exactly. It's all interlinked. You can't have one without the other, right? It's a connected world, a connected environment, if you might say. We're not talking about that, so all right, it's another time.
That's tomorrow, mate.
We'll come back. But I think, for me, we should all have the chance, and that's what we're about, democratizing learning. Every one of us should have the opportunity to do a course like this. And if it isn't this, find something. All right. Obviously, I think it should be this, but if it isn't, then find something. Find something that sort of talks to what drives you and what you're passionate about. Whatever that is, just go for it.
That's great. And it's that context, not content. It's actually wanting to bring your whole self to this and to go on that discovery, go on that journey of what it is that's important to you. Because I know in the past on some of the master's programs as well, people come in like, oh, I work at this bank and this is my job. And they come in with this thing and then they go, oh, I've actually got this idea that I've been tinkering with and it's my passion, it's a thing. And then before they, when they finish the program, they're actually going off to make that a startup. So it's really, I think that's really good. Tanya, do you want to add to that?
I think the only thing I would add, just in trying to imagine what's maybe on people's minds who are considering the program, is I think some people come in very clear, possibly. Some people we know might know their why and others don't. And so some people are coming and wanting to build on what they're doing. Yeah. Or like you say, they've got a thread of something. But I think also if you don't even have to have that to do the program in a sense. If you're curious what else might pop up for you, then just if you're interested in learning and you aren't wondering where the world's moving to, there's going to be so much variety of learning that something might trigger in you that you didn't anticipate being the thing that gets your attention and it becomes the new thing. Because we have evolving minds and we have evolving things that drive our passions. So I know I'm passionate about my business, but I chose on the assignments to do a passion thing, something else. And I really enjoyed following the thread around something that it's probably been my why, but I've chosen not to pursue it. So it gave me a chance to validate some of that thinking. And amongst, because we've got to remember, this isn't just about technology, it's about the human potential. I was particularly interested in, having worked in a lot of change projects, why the heck don't people change? And why aren't people doing this? And what's the missing component? And so I just think, yes, we all have a why and it's important, but you don't have to have that if you're just wondering what it might be, and enable this to be your thread, because the world is changing a lot. So there's a lot of brain sparks that'll go on. Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, just thinking when I talk to some potential students and they raise some of those concerns, for me, it's just come with the curiosity and you'll leave with a plan, because the process will do the work for you. And it is very cleverly designed in that you kind of do a drive-by, I guess, against all these this smorgasbord of amazing topics, and you get the chance to think if it's relevant to me or not. And you get to reflect and build it into your practice or not. So by the time you've worked through those 32 weeks, you've come out the other end with something that's bespoke to you. You've got a knowledge set and a sort of set of skills and a plan that is yours. So, and the other thing I'd just add to that is be part of the conversation, because if you're not, then think about who is, right? So if we think about who, if you're ruling yourself out because you're thinking I'm not techie or that's not me, you think about who we think about when we think of tech, the big tech, and who has got the power and control. And having those conversations, we need to have different voices having these conversations. So please bring yours, would be my plea.
I love that. That's so important. I think I would love to open up to some questions. Do we have any in the room? And you can ask Fiona a question more about the program, or you can ask Ian or Tanya about their experience on, as students. So we'll just offer to the room that people that are here now, if anyone has a question. There are no silly questions, I might add.
Can you share about what your final projects were, just to get an idea of what it looks like at the end?
So I'll just repeat that question just for the people watching online as well. So this lovely lady just asked to share a little bit about the specific projects, and we talk about the theoretical but actionable plan. What actually were those plans? So Tanya, do you want to give a little overview on yours?
Just because we're both very business projects, just to give context, in our room of only 6 people-ish today, we had 2 that were faith-based, one looking at VR in a church and one looking at how to use Agile to involve their organisation. And then we had one around Indigenous people and building communication and stories around birds and migration. So anyway, I can't remember them all, but just so you don't think they're all because ours are very heavily business focused.
Can I just add a couple while we're just talking about that? I did make some notes because it was fascinating. Another was around space archaeology.
That's right.
Setting up a space archaeology consultancy to retrieve
space archaeology, which doesn't exist, consultancy, just saying.
And drones for private pest control as well.
Yeah. Love that. Yeah. So ours are quite, very so initially, I was interested in, if we think about business today and where it needs to go, balancing the 3 Ps. So if we think about profit, planet, and people, and what organisational structures are setting them up for success. So I'm a certified reinvention practitioner, and that's an emerging framework, and I was curious about applying that through these organisational structures. And so in my research, where I ended up looking at the 4-day work week, purpose-led organisations, a spectrum. What emerged was that self-forming and self-managing teams is what's emerging in the future state. So there's different elements to those, but as an example, Hire, who I would never have thought has built self-managing teams, and they're really innovative. So they're able to be fast-moving, customer-centric, all of those components we need, as well as I feel giving a voice to the employees if they want to prioritise the planet potentially. So that was my first cut. But then I was like, well, how does particularly legacy organisations move to this non-hierarchical, autonomous way of working when leaders we still see are struggling to change their model? So I then moved to if I was to do a training program for leaders, whether they're managing people or not, what would that look like? And so not just theory, but how would they need to start behaving? So I was very much thinking that they need to think differently about how they work and what their role is. And so I then researched different elements. So if we think about how they even imagine how an organisation is going to change, how do they change their construct, as well as their leadership style. And then for me, it was important to have a component about teams, because we're moving away from individual performance, but to teams of teams. And so how do they think about crafting teams? So having done research and interviews and looking at a leadership program, which is where people take ideas, but then go and run experiments in their organisation to see what works. And this whole idea of having more autonomy for people and co-creation. So that was phase 2. Ian.
So I looked at AI and how it impacts recruitment. So I was going to focus on use cases in AI, and I realised it was so ubiquitous, it was kind of pointless because it's everything. Then I was looking and I had a bias in AI and the threats of bias in AI. So as a kind of side project, as it happens, we're actually going to do some work in that space, looking specifically at how AI tools are used by mining specific communities, which is cool. Can't wait to do that. And then I looked at how we adopt AI tools, or think more broadly HR technology tools within our environment. So what's our plan for adoption? How do we actually do that within Randstad locally versus Randstad globally? So it's actually about raising capacity, raising skills, democratizing learning. So that was kind of, what did you do?
Yeah, my theoretical but actual plan was to get a job and teach futures lab. Not quite, but yeah, in a very short summary, so I'm learning and development. I thought I'd be coming in to do, I had a couple of ideas. One was around a low code or a no code induction program. The other one was around a virtual Marae. And as I went through the process and kind of reflected on what I was hearing about, looking back at my organisation, where they were at, realised that tactical projects weren't going to cut it, needed to lift up and kind of come at it with a whole systemic mindset shift. So I ended up proposing a new model of organisational learning based on using the aspects of agile and design thinking. So yeah, but then I handed over the report.
You're like, bye-bye.
So I'll check in with how that's going at some point.
That's great. Should we take a question from our online participants?
It's fairly quiet.
Pretty quiet there. Feel
Still
free.
with us? Can they give us reactions? Are they still there? Can they give reactions so we know they're still with us?
Give a thumbs up if you
Yeah,
can.
something.
Do we have any other questions from our attendees here? Yeah.
Interesting. Another question. My second question is, you said 3 Ps, prioritize this question. I think that in my head, 3 Ps, I think that's into what it is. About participation, partnership, and protection. And so one of the questions that it's a very long-winded question.
That's right.
I'm trying to figure out how I can condense it. It's probably actually 3 parts, which makes it really tricky. Maybe you can take the first part and then the second part. Essentially, I guess if I maybe use the first part of the question as a framing, I'm interested to know sort of what elements are intrinsically integrated into the learning that make it culturally safe and mana enhancing. And particularly, when you talk about Te Tiriti o Waitani, and that really interests me, that space, not just in the digital sort of paradigm, but any paradigm when it comes to learning and education. So I guess if that's the framing, the question is sort of like, and if they do, then how does this program acknowledge Te Tiriti o Waitani at a deep level? That's the first part, and the second part is how does it actively contribute towards learners becoming good treaty partners? Which obviously we listen to some of the coke-up on the back of that first question. If that is integrated in, then that's obviously going to have an influence over the impact that your what do they call it, the theoretical practical plan could then have. There's a question in there.
There is.
That's a really good question.
It's a great question. It's a deep question. I think I can take a very high level, because I think that's also not just about human potential in the digital economy, but it's about the Mind Lab and Tech Futures Lab as an organisation. So if I may, I can talk to a little bit about that. So the question, I hope you heard that wonderful spiel leading up to a question, but it's really around how the Mind Lab Tech Futures Lab, this program, the people on it, can honour Te Tiriti, if I may, in the space, and how it is mana enhancing the work that the people here do. To awfully paraphrase your beautiful question. I think from the Mind Lab and Tech Futures Lab perspective, and I have to say, we're on a journey. You know, there was no way are we anywhere near where we need to be or want to be or strive to be. So we are on a journey. But I think as an organisation, we've rethought our entire teaching and learning strategy. So we have, it's called Te Ara Kōtihi, and it's the pathway to success. It's actually the graduation pin. It's a tohu that every learner gets. You'll get that on the graduation day, so you can pass and graduate. And people wear that with pride, and it's a koru at the centre, so our learners are at the centre and at the heart of everything we do. Then the structures and processes, the people, the systems are the niho taniwha, the teeth around that to support, to make sure that there are all these things, you know, the hui manaki, the ohu groups. There's lots of extra support around all of our learners, and also specific, you know, manaki whānau sessions for our Māori and Pacifica learners too. And it's all encompassed in this, you know, in this triangle, in this kōtihi, the summit. So it's that pathway to success, and that is, we live and breathe that in our organisation. So when, you know, even just Brad and I, whenever we're doing marketing campaigns, we ask ourselves, how is this Te Ara Kōtihi? How are we putting our learners at the centre? So I think even just in that respect, you know, the way we think and operate as an organisation, we've been on that journey to help, and that is, you know, been co-created with a number of people. So that's kind of just a bit of a bigger picture from that perspective, and the systems and processes that are part of that. We also have really like boring stuff, but like statistics of how all of the people that do on our programs completion, you know, rates and things like that, and how we can also do that. And there's also recent research practiced by a couple of our staff members, specifically around our Māori learners. And you know, a big part of that is accessibility and removing barriers to make sure that, you know, anyone can do our programs. But we know that there's underrepresentation with Māori, Pacific and over 60s in our programs. So we created scholarship funds to help people be able to come on and do these programs as well. So it's just kind of a smattering of things. You know, there's obviously lots more to it, and there's lots of people that we can connect you that can talk more to that. But I think Fiona might be able to talk to it from a program perspective. Yeah, I think to me, one of the values of Te Ara Kōtihi that I really value and work hard to build into our programs is ako. So it's that idea of reciprocal learning, that we value all our students, everything they bring with them when they come to join us, their experiences, where they've come from, what they've learned along the way. And we want that to be part, not just of their learning, but shared amongst their peers as well. So we really encourage opportunities for people to bring their whole self, all their experiences into that learning space. And likewise, our team and our speakers should be working with that and bringing that into their teaching as well, and bringing those experiences through wherever possible. And I think another thing that we kind of try and create, we talked about it before too, is that community. And I think within that sense of safety and belonging, where everyone can feel that their opinion, their views is valued and respected, and we want those to come forward and be part of the conversation. So ako, to me, is a really important part of how we do teaching and learning here.
Which one of those questions did we answer?
Yeah. Little bits of them, or there were a lot in there.
I think one of the reasons that the course works is the diversity of the people that are part of that course, right? So if everybody looked like me and thought like me, God help us, but you know, that wouldn't be interesting to me. I wouldn't have got the value out of the course, or any course, if that had been the case. So it needs the diversity of thought, it needs people to bring different ways of thinking that can change how you operate, how you think traditionally, because that's actually the outcome. That's the thing you're looking for when you get into something like this. If you're going to commit to learning, you actually want to change. If you just want to come out the other end with a certificate but you haven't changed, well, wasted your time, right? So for me, I love the fact that it was diverse. I love the fact there's people from all walks of life, ages, genders, class, industry, ethnicities, everything, right? So that for me is really powerful. And I think that's the kind of sort of secret sauce, if you like, of the course.
I think probably the youngest, I'm going to guess was, I'm terrible at age because I'm older now, but 20s, people in their early 20s, to what would have been our eldest person. I won't.
Late 60s, I think.
Late
Yeah.
60s.
Oh,
So
she's
real
older
age.
than
I don't know. And you get in trouble.
Yeah, we'll get in trouble. But definitely, I mean, I don't even think it felt like we're probably sitting here looking, because we are very corporate, but the room wasn't for a lot of people. So it was really good. The different roles people are doing, the different reasons they're doing the course, there was real good diversity, which created interesting conversations. Everyone had a different perspective. We had military, ex-military people there. We had, all real blend, which I think is, it didn't feel like, I suppose, maybe if I think of a traditional learning organisation, a sort of cut of a cloth, which is not what I wanted. I didn't want to just get a piece of paper.
Yeah, so I'm just looking at my sector or industry list from this current cohort. So we had people from higher education, from fitness, from cryptocurrency, from hospitality, from the golf industry, from building, from mobile network, alcohol, I don't know how, I guess that's an industry, and church and property. So like a real broad spectrum of people involved, and all, as the wonderful thing is, all going through the same process, all coming out with something uniquely specific and useful to them, which is just great.
Any other questions at all?
Please check this.
Yeah, if there's a part 3 to the question, by all means.
My background is in education.
Amazing.
And so something that always interests me whenever I go into any learning environment is what pedagogical approaches underpin the learning. So we've heard about the structure of the learning, and I was running a school as a principal of a school when lockdown hit, and so and a bilingual Māori kuta, so there's sort of best practice language acquisition pedagogies which have been developed and we applied, but then how do we do that on online version? So I sort of, there's blind spots there, but what really interests me in terms of a hybrid learning experience, is what are those sort of key foundational pedagogical approaches that underpin that learning experience?
Yeah, I'm good with that. So applied learning is a big one. Thank you. Taking that real world learning and giving people structures and processes to apply their own learning, that lens. I think, pedagogy, it's difficult, and it is difficult online. I think we may not have broken it down to exactly that, but I think in creating that sense of community and whanaungatanga, we put quite a bit of effort into that. So I think the cohort support, the community support, I would say it's very student-centered. I guess that will come down, I'll keep bringing it back to it's student-centered and learner-led. We do everything we can to, I guess, make it relevant to the learner, to the experience they bring. The process, the structures that we wrap around it are sufficiently flexible that they can travel through and get what they need from it. So I can't commit to a single pedagogy, but I can say that what we do works. And I think a lot of that is because we have a really personalised approach. We don't necessarily say one size fits all. And by the end of this the cohorts, this recent one being 64, we know everyone by the end of that cohort. We know everyone's name. We've had a conversation with them. We've helped them through their journey. So I feel that it's that personal touch is kind of our underpinning pedagogy.
This might be like kind of, surmising it into a tiny thing, but I think something that always comes up for me is the flipped preparation. And because on the MindLab side, a lot of our programs are for teachers and educators as well. So we have the postgraduate certificate in digital and collaborative learning, which is the most popular postgraduate program for teachers in the whole of Aotearoa New Zealand. We've had almost 5,000 teachers do that program. And flipped preparation, when teachers learn about the idea of sending kids something to go over, to reflect on, and then coming to those sessions armed with questions, like that has been so powerful. And a lot of our programs are done that way, that they get the cohort comms and they get the student emails, and it's got this information that's start your journey, you can kind of dive into it, and then when you've got those sessions, they are questions. It's that real challenging discussion, because people have done that, and especially some people, I know me, I'm very, very audio based. If someone explains a concept to me, I'll get it. If I have to read 10 pages, I'm going to need to read it over and over. I need to strip apart. So having those, you know, those options for people to take in the knowledge the way that they want to, and maybe do a bit more pre-reading or dive a bit deeper or read something over and over before they come to that session, to then come to that session, you know, really armed with that, you know, just ready to go and ready to have more of a conversation. I know that's like one aspect of a lot of things that we do, but I think that's always something that comes to mind and something that people have a bit of a revelation on our programs when they go through that process. Flipped prep or flipped learning, do you call that on HPD?
Flip prep, I think it is.
Flip prep, yeah, it's different on every program. We call it something different on every program. Don't know why.
Same concept,
yeah. Hopefully that contributes to your question. Awesome. Any questions come through online, Brad?
Nothing.
No? Very quiet. They must be just stimulated. In terms of timing, check back and seeing how we're doing. This is going to be, yeah, I think we maybe have a few final slides on the actual details, a little bit on next steps, which we can pull up. Obviously, Fiona probably could talk more to this, but then before we do that, I just want to say thank you both so much. I think all three of you. Fiona kind of like had to be here a little bit, but thank you so much for sharing your story, your journey, your experiences, both highs and lows. You know, this is for us as well. We could stand up here and talk about, oh, the program's so great and it does this and it does that, but hearing from you, hearing your experiences and being able to share on behalf of your cohort too is really special. So thank you both. I know it's been a long day and in person, but to also stay a little bit later and share with us, so we do appreciate it. The next steps, there's just a few things up there. So obviously we're going to send an email, Brad. Yeah, so anyone who registered for the event online or in person, you will get an email in your inbox probably tomorrow or the following day. And it will have a bunch of useful links and things that we might have, you know, brought up today with the slide deck. There is a 10% early bird discount. So if you enroll 4 weeks before the program, and that's just start your enrollment too. You don't have to fully complete your enrollment. You can just start your application 4 weeks prior. And you do get that 10% early bird discount. And there's the program handbook and some other really, you know, detailed pieces of collateral that you can have a read through. We have an amazing woman, Megan Brewer. She's our outreach manager for this program and really willing to just jump on a call with you or jump on a Zoom or just text or whatever you need to just ask her some questions, maybe dig a bit deeper into how it would work for you. I would also say Megan is fantastic at helping you have conversations with your employer or your boss or your manager if that's something you want to do. Professional development doesn't just benefit you as the learner, it benefits those around you. So businesses tend to have professional development budgets that can be accessed. Sometimes it's just about putting that case together. So we've got, you know, letters to my boss templates. Megan can help you, even if it's jumping on a Zoom with your boss to talk about the 5 top things that you'll learn from a program, anything like that. I'm really willing to do that because it's, again, just removing those barriers, whatever it might be that potentially would hold you back. So yeah, we've got, we can connect you with a student or a graduate, especially if you're in a specific industry and you'd love to talk to someone that's also in your industry and what change they did or what project they did. Happy to connect you with student or grad. And then, yeah, we have, as I mentioned, financial options. So you can talk to your employer and we can help manage those conversations with you. Study Link is available for these and fees free. If you haven't studied, you can check if you're eligible for fees free. And we do have our scholarships available. So at the moment, I think for Futures Lab, there is a little bit of money left in the pot for our Taipa Keke scholarship, which is our over 60s. But otherwise, our Tangata Whenua and our Pacific Arco have been fully allocated. Is that correct?
And we have our impact.
And impact scholarship. So this is a really fantastic one. So all of these are ways that My Unlimited Tech Futures Lab help to remove barriers for people that, you know, are desperately underrepresented in study and therefore in those industries of change and impact, as Fiona mentioned. So our impact scholarship is a 50% off fee. So you pay half and we pay half. And that's really around saying, hey, are you creating impact in your role, your organization, your iwi, your community, wherever? If you can prove that you are already creating impact and, you know, kind of in process of it, we can come to the table and you can apply for that in lots of different ways. You know, you can have a meeting with someone, you can do a video. There's just a couple of questions you kind of have to cover in your submission and you could get 50% off your tuition fee. So absolutely well worth looking at. And then, you know, that just ties even more with our whole ethos is creating impactful futures. If you are creating impact in your area, how can we come to the table? How can we help you with that? Next intake obviously starts on 11th of July, which is coming up.
Yeah.
We're in May. Oh my goodness, crazy. Is that the last slide? Oh, there we go. There's the lovely Megan. That's Megan Rory. Look at that little emoji. So yeah, feel free to reach out to her, have a chat. Again, her details will be in the recap email. So you'll be able to reach out to her, have a chat if that's something that you'd like to do. Do we have any final questions before we close this up? So obviously we can kind of mingle and stay around for a bit. If you've got any specific questions, I'm sure, you know, Fiona, Brad and myself will be here. Any other questions before we wrap up, or anything from online?
Nothing.
No?
Quiet.
Okay.
I just put a question to you two while we're here. Do you have any final thoughts or words to someone who might be thinking about doing the program, isn't yet sure? Last words of encouragement.
I suppose just on reflection, if you're wondering where the world's going and maybe your job skills or what you need, this is a great place to realise, I mean, you're not going to know it all, but actually understanding what is all these changes and what role do they play, not just the technology, but the human side. So I do think, I mean, it's a negative because someone even said today, as you learn more, you begin to realise how much we don't know. Yeah. But it's the world we're in, so we've got to stay educated. We have to. This is the space that we have to understand, because it's not just it's the technology, but it's the impact on us as human beings, whether it's us, our workplaces, whatever it is. If that's the space that you're feeling anxious about or you want to upskill in, then this definitely covers it. And I do think. Like today, that one of the, is it Rory? He's from Auckland University. Roy, he's VR, he's been immersed in it for years. So you've got some people that when they're talking about blockchain and NFT, and even they say, we don't know what the metaverse is, but you've got some real experts showing up that it feels really cool to get access to those people that are on that cutting edge. And, if you imagine 32 weeks, 32 people, that's a lot of experts coming in the room. And it's the only way we're going to learn it is from these experts. So that I do like, that it's not a theoretical thing. These are people that some of them are in a day job and then they come in and share their expertise. Yeah.
Same question.
I think if you're curious and you feel like you need something and you're not kind of sure what that looks like, take a closer look, see if it fits with what you're actually looking to achieve, right? You may not, in which case do something else, but do something. And I think that's the kind of key, right? It's just do something, right? There's no point sitting there doing nothing. There's a lot of work in it.
There is one.
Not going to lie to you, but what you put in rewards you at the end, right? So, I think the biggest takeaway is you can actually use what you learn every day, and specifically in your work or your life or your passion project, whatever it is, and you get to decide. Nobody else tells you kind of how you need to use that information or what you need to do next. It's kind of up to you.
And just to also give some context with busy people, I mean, what do you have down that the additional hours you might need to spend is what, 8 to 16? Yeah. I never did that.
We have to have that.
I know. So if you're worried about the overload, I definitely because I did interview some of my cohort as part of my project, some people who weren't as technology driven, they were passionate, they wanted to learn more and they would have spent time, but some of that I didn't do that, but then I wrote a 60-page paper, so clearly I did a lot of work and research in my application. So I think also there's a reality between, it's not like you could be spending every night doing study, but it's not that sort of learning.
And there's also, what we find too is people studying, agility and things like that, they actually are going, right, I'm actually going to implement Trello in my workplace, train my team. That's your 16 hours, like that's part of your time. You're actually on the job. You're doing it practically, you're running a facilitation or you're sharing a keynote speaker that you had and sharing that with your group. Like it's all part of it. It's all that regurgitation. Or you're signing up for some really interesting email newsletters or listening to new podcasts that you've never listened to before and learning while you're walking to work or walking to the sessions. It's good in that way too.
You get access to lots of different other information, right? The digital briefings, kind of good stuff. But I think you raise a good point at the end, which talk around the fact that Tanya and I are representing the cohort, right? So and we've got to honour that, and it's people from all walks of life, and that was great. And I'm hoping that those connections will remain, right? And so I think that's another win that I'm looking forward to, is connecting with those people. Maybe they, give me a job or something.
Are you giving people jobs?
Yeah, I suppose.
Is it your
I'm gonna
job?
get people jobs, yeah.
But that raises a good point, because the alumni community is something that we've worked quite hard on too. So, you know, there's now a formalized alumni community. There's closed groups on both Facebook and LinkedIn that you get to join once you've fully got that tick, then you get access to those. You know, we run regular monthly alumni connect online Zoom sessions, so you have that opportunity to just reconnect and check back in. But not only are you part of your HPDE cohort, what number are you? Four. There's also the, you know, postgrad certificate in digital collaborative learning, the Masters of Contemporary Education, the Leading Change for Good, all these other programs, all these other change makers doing stuff in their spaces too, that you get to connect with and get access to as well. So, and also the people that have done the course before you and will come and do the course after you. So it's a really great little network, and we're working on some very cool concepts about the alumni as well this year. So watch this space, because there'll be some more fun things to happen.
Yeah, and I just said curiosity got you this far. It's brought you along tonight, either online or face to face. So just come be part of the conversation. We need you.
Yeah. Awesome. That's a great note to finish on. Thanks. So we'll do our karakia whakakapi and close the night. As I said, feel free to have a drink, stay around for a little bit if you'd like. The aircon has gone off, so it'll start to get a bit stuffy in here. Awesome. So thank you all so much for coming, both online, joining us, and in person. Thank you for braving the weather and the traffic and the late nights and everything like that. We really appreciate you being curious, showing up, being, you know, interested in learning more. So thank you all for coming. Appreciate you. Ki ingoe tātou. Ka whakaeria te tapu, kia wātea ai te ara, kia turiki whakataha ai, kia turiki whakataha ai. Haumi e, hui e,
Thank you.